Hello, hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sounds okay.
Cool, cool. So let's wait for another 2 minutes. Hi, Luke. Congrats on your masters.
Hi, thank you very much.
Okay, 22 people. Code, please, so we can copy. Yes, thank you for reminding. So this goes here. Okay, I think it's time to start. So, hi everyone. I hope you had a good week. I hope you liked the assignment, but we'll get to that a bit later. So, you should start the quiz now. Okay, so let's start with this first. So, in today's lecture, we'll start with the quiz with the material from last time. We'll talk a bit about the second programming assignment. I'll show you some example solution, just like last time, pretty much. And then, yeah, the main topic of today is going to be about JavaScript objects and pretty much what are those and what do you do with them. And then we'll do a little bit of GitHub, just the basics, so you can get started with it. Yeah, and then there'll be another coding challenge pretty much. And also, as last time, someone requested if there is time in the end to, I'll tell you a bit about the projects that I worked on and the kind of stuff we pretty much do. Okay, I'll now go back to the quiz. So you all know already how to join. So I see 3 people in already. So let's get started. Okay. Your camera is turned off. Yes, it's on now. Thanks. Okay, 17 people. Anyone else? I know there should be 3 or 4 people who weren't able to join today, but okay, we'll start in about 15 seconds. Well, I guess this is what it is. Okay, so if you're ready, we're gonna start it now. And okay, someone else joined, right? Okay, cool. I'm starting right now. So question 1. What will be the output of this code? And also let me know if the quality, thanks for the haircut. Let me know if the quality of the code is readable on your phones or devices, whatever. I hope it's better than last time. Also, I tried to put more time because I got some feedback from some people that, it was definitely not enough time. And I think with all the loading, it takes a while. So let's see what we have here. Okay, great. Pretty much most of the people got it right. Yeah, I guess for that one person, I guess don't forget that arrays start counting at 0. So that's kind of it. Next. What is the output of this code? Okay. All right, most people got it right. So yeah, in case for those two people, the false value is actually also a value in JavaScript. So unless it's undefined, each of the object is going to count to the length of the array. Okay, let's go forward. Yeah, what about this one? By the way, I'm wondering, if you join later, are you able to join the quiz, or that's it? All right, we'll get to this code back again. So yeah, unfortunately I can't show you the image, but basically there was a unshift and a pop operation. Just review the slide about those four, yeah, about pop, push, shift, and unshift. And yeah, be careful about what they exactly do. Okay, we'll move forward. What is the role of array.filter function in JavaScript? It removes the undefined elements from an array. It verifies if each element meets a certain criteria. It creates a new array with all elements that pass the test, or it removes the first element from the array. Let's see if you remember. Wow. So a lot of people yeah, confused this one. So if you remember, there was a slide about filter each and any or something like that. So the filter operation will first check if the element passes the test, and after that it will put that in a new array. Okay, so the one with the verification, if each element meets a criteria, that's the .each function. So in that case, you're just looking for a true/false value. In this case, you're actually filtering and creating a new yeah, a new array. So yeah, once you'll get to use it a bit more, it'll yeah, be more clear. Question 5. What is the role of document.getElementById? Okay, so most of the people got that one right. I guess review the slide in case you forgot, but yeah, that's what this function does. And question 6. Yeah, another coding one. Yeah, this one, first time I'm trying this, you actually have to type the output of this. There's not many letters, so hopefully you make it in time. Okay. Time's up. Whoa, that's a lot of a lot of values. So yeah, basically, what happens in the code is that I read those specific characters So you look at the numbers, and then the last one, if you want to get the if you want to get the last value, you pretty much use the length -1, and that's how you construct the string. So IO4, IOE, Bob, that's good enough, cool. All right, and question 7. Which function adds a new element at the beginning of the array, so in position 0, and moves the other elements to the right, or increments their ID, or call it whatever you want. Everyone has answered. Nice. Okay, so most people got this one right. So unshift is a function which takes an argument, and in the argument, it's actually the element that you want to put in the beginning. So the shift one, it's the one that takes an element out. So that one does not take an argument. Yeah, so we have all those 4 on a slide from last time, but I guess it'll be, once you do a bit more practice, you'll get used to it. But also, it's really fine if you Google it from time to time. Even I do it, to be honest. So, all right. Now, the leaderboard: Mihaela, Z, Anna Tchaikovsky, Yura, Aposto Daniel, and Alex G. Good job. Yeah, 501 points. So that's pretty much, I think, all the questions answered. Well, good job. I see that most of the people got all the stuff right, except for that tricky question. So, well, at least the theory seems to be understandable by most of you. Now we're going to get to the slightly more difficult part, the assignment. But before we discuss the solution, I want to show you, just like last time, a bit of the highlights. I had them somewhere here. I'm just going to use this because I can use animations here. So I've seen some really impressive designs for sure. Yeah, there's people who even added sound to their to-do list. That was a bit unexpected. There was a screaming sound when you removed an item. Yeah, a lot of creativity, a lot of work with CSS. Yeah, there's some more here. Yeah, we see here some of this Google material design looking really nice. Yeah, so a lot of people did add the extra. But yeah, before I go to the solution, also I wanted to discuss that I noticed that a lot of people kind of reused what they found on W3 Schools, because there is like a to-do list example. I guess it's quite a standard thing that people do when they learn JavaScript and web design. So in general, it's fine when you copy paste code from, to reuse solutions from all over the world. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's absolutely right. But whenever, like, what I suggest is that you don't just copy paste like everything and then you do some adjustments. Try to take, module by module, copy a piece of a function that you understand, copy like a filtering function, copy, make sure that everything you put in your code, you understand what it is. It's fine to save some time by copy pasting some things, but understand what you're doing. So there's that. And yeah, I've noticed a lot of people put a lot of focus on CSS rather than understanding the whole JavaScript part. The thing is, later in the course, we're going to learn about React. We're going to learn about material design. So in easier words, we're just going to learn how to use already existing design components, like from Google, for example, where you don't need to go so much details in CSS and so on. So you only need to understand, the main things. Yeah, so also with the future assignments, make sure you understand the functional part, especially the JavaScript part. Try to do it yourself first, and then, copy paste stuff from out there. Yeah, but in general, pretty good, I would say. Also, if anyone has maybe now some comments about the difficulty, I forgot to put in a questionnaire about that. If anyone found it, let's say, confusing or like really difficult or stuff like that, would you have, like now it's the time to say if you would like. Or did you all find it just challenging enough or very easy? Okay, you can also write afterwards in Slack in a personal message. But the thing is, if you feel like you're lagging behind a bit, give like we've seen just some people who you put a question and people really want to help you, so that's really great. It helps both of you because if you're able to explain to your peer, if you're able to explain something to your peer, then it means you also understand it better. Would like to see your solution. We are getting there in a second. Also, as usual on our GitHub, give me a second. I'll just send you the link again. On the GitHub, you can already find the updated, let's put it here, and let's put it here. Yeah. So in lecture 3, assignment, this is where you'll find the solution. We're about to get through it. So if you feel that you already are confused about a lot of things, start formulating the questions, right? Try to understand where exactly you're stuck. What do you not understand, right? And people really want to help here. I don't know what else to say. It really depends on you. You have to come up with the questions. So myself, Itoro, when we have time, we try to answer in the same day, more or less. And yeah, we've seen some of the colleagues here are also willing to help a lot. So now with the solution, let me make this a bit more readable. So let's make this 32, I guess. Cool. Now with the solution. So get into the code. Let's see how it looks like right here. So I made it really simplistic without no fancy stuff. So it's it's clean, so you understand what's important there. This is pretty much how the solution would look like. I'm just going to type some code here, some text here, here. So this is together with the extras. Oh, invalid input. Oh yeah, I'll explain why that happens. So pretty much what we used here, it's just 3 CSS parameters as we discussed. So we have the margins, margin top, margin bottom. So you've probably already seen this. If not, this margin, it's like a CSS property which tells you how much distance should be under and top of an element. We use background color, which means exactly that. And we use some padding. So that means that the text appears here in, with a bit of distance. And it gives you this feeling of cards, I guess. So, the up-down functionality, the remove one. So this is how functionally it should have looked like with the extras. Now going back to the code, I think if I make it maybe a bit smaller. No, okay, let's try like this. So this is HTML, very simple, pretty much what you've seen. The title, the style sheet separated, so as you learned last time. And then in the body, we just have, the title. We have the list container, so the UL with that ID, that then we'll refer in JavaScript. We have the text input where we gave it an ID and we call it input item. And the placeholder, this is a parameter for the input, which says what kind of text should appear there before you put anything. So maybe it's quite obvious for some of you, but it's pretty much this text right here. The button, you've seen that already in the previous assignment as well, also with an ID, and then the script separated like we learned last time in the lecture. Now, let's get to the actual interesting part, so the script. So in order to explain it, I'm going to start from the bottom, because what I have here is just multiple functions, and we'll get to each of them. So what I do here, I get an element by ID, so I'm searching for the button that has that ID, the only one in the page initially. And then on the click event, I'm adding this function. So now let's go up. This is the function add item. What we do now, it's we are looking we're looking at the ID of this input. Pretty much we're kind of referring to this, right, to the text input. So we're referring to this part here. And then what we do, this is like a bit of a fancy thing we added. We check if the value of this can be found in the already existing array, but you can ignore it for now, but that's kind of the purpose of it. So this part would not allow you to add an item if it already exists in the list. You can take a look at the code later if it's not clear what's happening here. And then, yeah, let's assume this item does not exist in the list. We have an array called items, which I declare all the way here. So there we go, array items. And into this array, we're doing push. So if you remember, push adds an item to the end of the list, to the end of the array. And what we do, we add the value of that text. So the dot value of input element, it's pretty much the string, the text that was added in that text field. And then this is also, before we go to the modify HTML, this is so this is also something that some people maybe missed. When you type text and you click on, oh, zoom please, I'm sorry, I just noticed. Is this font too small?
No, this was for the demo. This is fine. That was earlier.
Ah, okay. Yeah, yeah. It's this. It's boring, I guess. Yeah. Before I go in, all right. So before I go into this function, something important is that when you submit your text, you want the you want the text input to be cleared. Okay. So when to make this more clear, so when I type some text here, the moment I click the button, I also want this to empty out. So this is, a very typical classical user experience thing. You don't want your text to be there again, that you can accidentally just add the same element multiple times. Okay, now let's go up. Let's see what does this function do. So modify HTML, it's the function that actually takes that array and makes things show on the screen. So first of all, we have to know where that list container is. So if you remember, we have this container right here. So the UL with ID container, we refer to it right here. We call it list container. And now what we do is that this function has the purpose of pretty much clearing out all that list. And then, thanks, Julian. And then pretty much clearing out all the HTML inside that container. And then what we do here, for each of the items in this array of items, we are going to do the following. Create a new element of type li. Okay, so those are the list elements. We give them an ID, okay? And the ID of the element will be the same as the ID as the text. So if that's confusing, let's take a look here in the console. If I want to look specifically at here, I'm going to do inspect. And what we see here is that this list, oh, okay, I can zoom in, I'm sorry. I can see your faces going to the screen. Yeah, like this. So here we have the UL, the list container. And if we look at the first element, inside it, it has this text, the buttons, we're about to look at those, but also its ID. It's also that text, right? So because it's unique, so that's also possible to do. Today we're going to learn about objects, and we're going to do more fancy stuff. But for this purpose, this also works. This is not the only solution, but it's somehow an interesting one, I guess. Okay, so we created the element, we gave it an unique ID, and now what we want to do is we want to create 3 elements, which are those 3 buttons. So this is one way to create those elements. It's a lazy way, but it works. You can pretty much declare a string where you type all the HTML as if you would write it in HTML, I guess. So this part, we're about to go a bit further. This is when we look at the up and down functionality. But let's say now we just look at the remove button. So this is how we declare it as a string. And then what we do, the list item, again, this item there, .inner HTML, what we want to do is we put the text itself, right? It's in the variable item. And then we also add this string, right? Button remove. So that is indeed possible. Later, we're going to learn more fancy ways of doing it. You can, I think, a smarter, let's say, a more formal way would be that you create like document.create element, and then an element of type button, and then you do you have to give it to a variable. So this is just to know maybe in the future assignments that this is also a possibility. And then you can also do delete button dot on click, and then you can write a function here. This is a more JavaScript way, so to say, without having to deal with this strange looking stuff, because you can do a lot of mistakes here. But if you do stuff like this, you can programmatically create a whole nice UI. But for this purpose, this is good enough. And and in the same way, we also put the other 3 buttons, and then we put that to the list. And then we also, in the list container, all the way up here, we do .append child, and that's pretty much it. You take a list item and you put it in that list there. Now, looking at the functionality of the buttons, so the remove functionality, we see here that inside the string, we right away said that on click, we want a function called remove item, okay? Also, this part we'll kind of learn today. This is not, again, the only way to solve this this assignment. But what we do here, we immediately attach the on-click event to the button. And let's look at the remove item. So we go to the remove item function, and it does the following. You remember the filter functionality, right? So what we're doing is we look at items, and we want to remove. So .filter, if you remember, it will take out only the elements that meet a certain criteria. And we pretty much want to copy all the elements except for that one element for which this text will be exactly the same as the ID of the parent element. Okay, so .parent element, it's a property of any kind of element that you get it with this kind of structure. Okay, I will send you some links afterwards, and you can take a look at the solution and try it yourself. Some people already discovered how to use that themselves. Again, this was not the only way; it's one way. This is JavaScript. So looking back here, we're pretty much looking at the fact that we want to remove that item from this list. And then we execute modify HTML again. And if we look at modify HTML again, this happens again. So the items, it's a slightly smaller array now. And then again, for the remaining items, we just render them again. Computationally, maybe this is not the most efficient way, but this is really good enough now for you to understand JavaScript and HTML. But functionally, this works. And now if we look at the button up and button down, I've seen people used a lot of interesting ways to do this. I'll show you what we have here. So if we're looking at move up, we first want to know where the new position of the item should be. But beforehand, before we put the buttons, we want to make sure that not every element has those buttons, right? Because let's zoom out. Let's do it like that. So for example, the first element should not have the possibility to put to move it up, and the last one, you don't want it to have the possibility to move down. So if we look at the modify HTML, here, these 2 if statements, they do the following. We look, if you remember, this is inside the iterator. If the index of the element is 0, pretty much the first one in list, then button up will be like an empty string. So we're not adding this to the inner HTML of the list item, pretty much. Okay, and button down, we don't want that to appear at the last element. So you've seen it in the quiz. The way to get the ID of the last element in an array, it's items.length, array.length -1. So, and we clean up this variable, in such a way that this will pretty much be nothing, and that's why some of the elements, so that's why the first and the last one don't have the ones that we don't want them to have. Now, now the functionality of the move up and the move down is pretty much the following. We want to know what's the new position where we want to place the element, and we do that with, if you remember, the array.indexOf. And indexOf, it's a function of an array that you give it a value, okay? And which value we're looking at? We're looking at the ID of the parent element, okay? And why we have this parent element is because the button, it's a child element of the button is a child element of the list item. Okay. Okay. A question from Samuel. What is index here? So moving back to the iteration. So for each, if you remember, you can do an iteration by just doing this, but you can always add another variable. You can call it index. You can call it I. Index, it's pretty much the location of an element in an array. That's kind of it. So in here, we're doing this for every element, and index will indicate that. So if index equals 0, it means now we're doing the 0th iteration, the first iteration, okay? And it means that this if statement will be true, which means that button up will not be rendered. That's kind of it. And then once we get to the last element, it means that this index will have the value of this, which means that's how we know we're in the last element at this moment, which means button down shouldn't appear. Okay, so going back to the functionalities themselves, yeah, so the new position, the way we get that, so this is a function attached to the button, which means that, yeah, this elem thing here, this argument, let's go back to this. You see we're using the word this. You're going to learn what this word means today, pretty much. But when you refer to this, it means that inside the function itself, you can refer to the HTML button, okay? Which means that I can take this argument and do .parent element, .id, and it means that I'm going to get the unique ID, like this ID right here, this one, yeah? I'm going to get this ID of the list element in which the button is placed. Okay. Yeah, and we, yeah, so the position now, the new position has to be that one minus 1 because we want it to move up. So move to the left if we speak about the arrays. And then what we do here, let's see. So we want to remove that element from the list, and then we wanted to add it at that position. So I'm not going to go into the details what exactly this does, but again, it's a filtering function. We are looking for that item and we remove it if it has that ID. And then splice, if you had time to take a look at what this functionality does, it means it does the following. It takes this array, it goes to that position where you want to place an array, and then you say how many elements you want to remove, and then you say what you want to add to it. Pretty much, you can check the documentation for it, but what this line does eventually, it puts an element exactly in the place where we want it to put, where we want to put it. Okay, and then we do modify HTML again, and then everything is re-rendered. And yeah, when I click up here, there we go. This is what it does. And yeah, for down, it's absolutely the same function. You can also do this in a smarter way where you just have one function and it takes an argument, but this is good enough for a demo now here. Yeah, only difference here is that instead of removing one from the ID, you add one. Thus, it moves to the right or it goes downward. So you'll have all this code. And yeah, and the styles.css, I don't think I have to go much into this. We just pretty much any list element gets this nice margins and colors, and yeah, that's kind of it about CSS. Okay, so you have the link to this code. You'll have time to look more in details and give questions. And see, let's try to kind of keep it within 5-7 minutes of questions to this. So yeah, let's start. You can also unmute and speak. That's faster. I doubt there's no questions. Okay, Michaela, can you explain how we can add a button inside lead element using a pen child? Okay, yeah, so the proper way, not the one that we seen here. So yeah, let's say we want to do this button. I already showed you, but maybe I'll be more specific now. So const, let's say we call it remove button equals document.createElement. So you probably seen this already in some of the lectures or in some of the solutions, but what this line does, we create an element of type li, which does not exist anywhere in the document because we haven't attached it to anything yet. And then, oh, sorry, button. I'm really sorry, button. So yeah, now we created a button that doesn't exist anywhere. And now remove button has all those properties of what an HTML button has, okay? So if we do on click, we can define the function here, you know, like goes up, whatever, like I'm not gonna type it again. And then you can also do stuff like remove button dot ID. You also maybe want to give it an ID, why not, you know? And probably because we're going through an array, you want to pretty much do something like this. You want to give it a suffix and then maybe add the index. So each button has a very individual ID. That's, I guess, a good way to do it. And now this button has to be placed somewhere. So we have the list item. So this would be, let's say, the parent of that of this button. So what we do list item dot append child remove. That's it. So I suggest you always try to use this kind of construction. It's way less chance of you having an error. It looks like you're coding rather than this where you're just typing a lot next to each other. So yeah, remember this construction, go back to the video, take a look. This is, I guess, a good way to programmatically create an element and add it. Okay, so any other questions? We can still spare some minutes for this. Really? No one? Okay. Okay, if I guess if you can you hear me? Did I disappear maybe?
Yes.
How we insert an icon? Okay, so a question: how we insert an icon font awesome? Well, this is a styling question. I can refer you some link later, but it's yeah, it's not pretty much relevant now for this lecture. I'll send you some links if I find something, but I think if you Google exactly what he wrote, you'll find it in the first 3 answers. Can we do drag and drop? Yeah, drag and drop, we learn how to work with more advanced components later. I've seen someone did a drag and drop because he made use of a library, what was it, jQuery. So if some of you are familiar with the jQuery, it's a library that kind of solves a lot of the problems with JavaScript and web and kind of simplifies your workflow. But yeah, lately it's kind of getting like deprecated. It's getting like, let's say, end of life, because now there are frameworks like React, Angular, and Vue, which do that in a better way. And those kind of libraries, they have components that easily allow you to do drag and drop. So in theory, you can make drag and drop just with simple HTML elements and some fancy CSS. Well, it's good if you can do that, but it takes quite a lot of time, I guess. And it's, yeah, you're reinventing the wheel. So yeah, later when we learn React, I'm going to show an example with drag and drop. One more question, and then we move on. I'll start closing, I guess. Back on. Did I just miss the presentation? Wait a second. Okay, import the font awesome link in HTML. Okay, yeah, there you go. You got an answer. All right. So back to this. Okay, close the presentation. No. Do not get in the quiz, please. Yeah, now finally getting to the content of today. How many lectures are in total? Yeah, so as I mentioned, the initial poster or whatever is going to be 3 months. So 3 months, 4 weeks each, more or less. I guess it's going to be 12 lectures. So the way, pretty much the lecture of today. And if you manage to do the assignment of today, you can kind of say that you achieved a beginner junior level in JavaScript coding, so to say. What we're going to do in the next month, we're going to focus a bit on servers, on APIs, words that if you don't know them, we're gonna learn them later. And we're going to learn a bit about how do you make a full web application. That's going to be the second month mainly. And slowly, by the end of the second month and start of the third month, we're going to learn React, so how to make like modern user interfaces. And then in the very end, for 3 weeks or 2, we'll see how it goes. It really depends also on you, on how fast you're with assignments, like how do you find the difficulty. We'll leave the last 2 or 3 weeks for like this group project, and I think at that point we can kind of conclude it. So 12 lectures in total. This is the 4th one. And hopefully you're all full stack developers after that. At least get a good idea of how it is and how to do it. And also hopefully you have a final project of yours that you can put on your GitHub, be proud of it and show it to people. So that's kind of the plan. And then we can talk to see everyone what are you looking for the future, how we can help you, and so on. Okay. So objects in JavaScript. So last time we've learned about arrays, and that's the first, let's say, complex data structure that we've learned, because so far we've worked with variables. So after 12 weeks, you can make 100K salaries in US. Yeah, sure. Why not? 150K. No, that not. Yeah. Not in Europe though. So in Central and Western Europe, that would be. I showed you the statistics. I'm not going to repeat myself. Okay, objects. Okay, so far we've worked with variables, text, strings. We've worked with numbers, and last time you learned about arrays, about like a more advanced, data type. And today we're going to learn about kind of like the very specific type that was invented together with JavaScript. The JavaScript objects. Sometimes also named as JSON, so JavaScript object notation. And this kind of data structure that appeared in JavaScript is something that kind of radicalized, let's say, it's something that was transferred to a lot of other languages all over the world, I guess. And it's kind of a very standard way now in which web applications send the data between each other and so on. So what is an object? An object is pretty much a variable which has multiple keys and values. And what these keys and values are, understand them however you want, but they're pretty much like sub-variables, parameters of this main variable, okay? So this example kind of explains it. Let's say you have a variable called dog, and it has an age, and it can be of type number. You can have other parameters, like size, race, which are of type string. You can also have a variable, like a Boolean variable, if it's big or not true, or so on. And you can also put an array inside this object. Okay, so you've already learned about arrays last time. One of the parameters can also be an array. And what are you going closer to the real world? Yes, exactly. And what you're going to see in some slide after that, you'll see that an object can also be a sub-object of an object, but you'll see it in an actual example. So here on the left, I tried to make this visualization to kind of understand how this variable looks like. So yeah, all of these things are called keys. So in arrays, we call them IDs or indexes. Here we call them keys. And yeah, the values of it are called values. Yeah, simple as that. And if you have an array as a value, then this pretty much becomes the stuff that you've seen last time. So each element has their ID. It works like an array, nothing special. It's just part of an object. So why do we have these objects in general? So with arrays, you can solve a lot of stuff. You've seen you can make a list. You can pretty much do quite a lot of interesting things with arrays. But arrays are limited in the term of that if you want to refer to a specific element, you should always look at specific IDs. They're arranged in a specific order. And also, not going much into computer science, index value is part of description. No. Index value, this is just to explain that of this array, these are the indexes of each of them and the values. It's just an array. That's it. So with arrays, this is a list where each of the elements has like an ID. It has an order and so on. But sometimes, real-life data structures, actually work like this. You have parameters, descriptive parameters, actual names, age, size, and so on. And they are of different kind of types. So that's kind of why objects had to be created. Now, what you can do with this object. So this is how you declare it. Again, in JavaScript, there's a lot of other ways to declare an object, but the most simple way to declare an object is to just type it as it is. That's it. And you already seen how we declare it. And now, let's say if you want to read a specific parameter, you've already seen in a lot of other functions, you use the dot, okay? So you use the name of the variable, dot, the name of the key, and you will see the output of that. So this code is already in GitHub as well. I'm not going to type it now because what you will see here, it will be dog is very big. You'll see this text. The next thing, if you want to see an element of an array as a description, again, only difference is that we use dog dot, right? We use the name of the variable dot. So when you put dot, it means that you're looking at a child of the element, I guess. And then whatever you do with this, it's absolutely the same array operations, right? You can do dot pop, dot push to this, and so on. Further, if you want to change the value of one of the elements, it's very straightforward. You just make it equal to something, just like any other variable. Only difference is that you write the name of the parent, dot name of your key, and then you make it equal something. And then if you're going to print it, obviously you're going to see that number. So hopefully nothing special there. And the next thing is something that, I personally, when I learned JavaScript, I wasn't aware of it. You can also refer to a key in this way, okay? It's a bit strange, but you'll see later why this is important to use in practice. Can we use triple equals on objects? So between objects not, we're about to get to the part where we learn about references and values, but it's not so straightforward. So you can use the triple equal with certain values. So you can do like dog.size triple equal dog dot something else, but making objects equal, that's a bit of a different story. We're about to get there. So back to this reference. So if I do this, put the square brackets and put a string inside, this will also work, right? I can either refer to a key by doing dot and the name of it like that, or put a string. Why this construction is useful is because sometimes you can pretty much create a variable, a string variable, a text variable, and you can pass it here within the square brackets. You can programmatically create this string and put it in here, and then you read the value of that. It'll be more clear in practice. You'll pretty much, through the assignments in the future, through whatever problems you're solving, you'll get to a point where like, oh, that's why I need it. It'll get clear, But for now, always try to, it's preferable that you use the dot notation. Also, your IDE allows you for like auto-completion, and this is pretty nice. Well, with this one, doesn't work this way. So the other thing here, I think I already showed you. You can change the value of whatever you want. either a number or a string. So that's pretty much this. This is pretty much about declaring an object and accessing its values. Question from Apostle Daniel: can you define an operator triple E like in C++? I'm going to say it's simple no. Like if we go in a very deep geek level into this, maybe yes, but for now, let's say no. Okay. So what some of the things that you can do with objects, for example, if you want to get a collection of all the keys, or if you want to get a collection of all the values inside it, you have this functions. Now let's take a look here on the left, which has multiple sub-objects, and as I mentioned, an object can be. Am I having trouble with the internet? By the way, is the quality connection is poor? Yes, good point. Let me give a check right now. Yes, I'm connected here. It is for me as well. Okay, the coding. Sorry about that. Is it coming back alive or not really? Somehow?
For me, it's fine. I can hear and see you totally fine.
Okay, cool. It's okay, right. Yeah, I see the registration still goes in full HD, so just in case you missed something, you can, you'll take a look at it on YouTube. Okay, so here, let's say we have an object, we call it students, and as I mentioned, an object can also be part of another object in this kind of way. What's important to know is that if you want to add a sub-object, it should also have a key, right? So this is the name of the main variable. This would be a key, and this is the key to this variable, and this variable is also an object, okay? And you can go as deep as you want, right? That's this, this meme here from Inception. And this is, what we have here. We have an object which has 3 keys, Ion, Boris, and Andrei. And these keys, they are, their value is this 3 things right here. So there's 3 sub-objects, so to say. Okay. I'm thinking to get maybe into the coding part. Okay, let's try a bit with the theory, and if there's something is not clear, I'll open the IDE. Okay. So one of the things is, what if we want to see all the keys in this as an array? You'll see later why this is necessary. But if you use this construction, object, so the word object, that's like the name of it, not a name of a variable, really the word object, dot keys. And inside this, you put students, you put the name of your object, you'll get an array with each of these words. And in case someone is confused, I think it's about time we open the IDE. Gonna just make a folder. Okay. And I think if I just do this, this should be good enough. Yeah, let's use some real life names. So const car. Let's see if this is good enough. Sorry. Oh, I called it .gs. Yeah, that should be .html. There we go. So let's get started with objects. So we're just going to use the console, nothing special here. Okay, so an empty object can also be declared like this. This is a minimum amount of stuff you need to declare an object. If we print it out in the Google Chrome console, it looks like this. And then also I don't need to preserve the logs. And then let's declare a key into it, and let's put age 15. And you see Google Chrome allows you to nicely arrange your keys one by one. Let's declare another parameter to it, like model. How do you type this? There we go. So now we have an array. We have an object with two keys. Something I think I forgot to mention. You can also create a new key in your object just by coming up with whatever you want. Let's say car dot number of wheels. Yeah, we make it equal 4. And if I refresh, I see that this was added in here. Okay. So a lot of languages which also have like classes and objects and stuff like that would definitely not allow you to do this kind of things. But in JavaScript, you can dynamically enrich your object, remove stuff from it. Yeah, so there's our Java coder there laughing about it. Yeah, so this is really cool because it saves a lot of time. I don't know what else to tell you. And now, yeah, as I mentioned, in case you're still confused, you can also have a sub-object of the car. Let's say we define something called driver, okay? And driver is an empty object. Yeah? At this point, still have this, this looks like an object with no parameters in it. And let's say the driver also has age, yeah, 12, I guess. Yeah, we open it and then we see that this is an object, and you can open up, and then this is the next one, and it can also have yeah, it can also have like sorry about that, should have some water. Anyways, what's important is that yeah, an object can be part of can be a sub-object, and it can have its own keys and values, and that's pretty much it. Now, what I showed now in the presentation is about the object.keys. So I'm going to remove this. So object.keys, and if I'm going to write this variable here, and we want to directly log that in the console. Enter, refresh. So there you go. Let's also print our object as well. Not. Okay. So this is our object, nothing surprising there. And what we have here, this is an array of, yeah, this is an array with strings. So it pretty much took each of these words, transformed them to a string, and then we'll see why you would need this. And then we see that driver, we just see the key of it, right? We don't see anything within the object. But now if we want to see the keys of driver, we do car dot driver. Now we refresh and we see age and name. So again, each of the keys placed as a string inside an array. Okay, it might be confusing for now, but you're about to understand why this is important. So object.keys and also object.values. So in the same manner, if we want to read only the keys, we can also read only the values. Okay, so I'm just going to change this word. We're first going to look at the values of car. Okay, save, refresh, and what do we see here? It's an array. It's a very strange looking array because each element is of kind of a different type. But this is an array. The first element is 15. The second element is the string BMW, and then the third element, it's like this whole object on its own. Okay, and then there's another one, entries, and this one creates an array with multiple arrays inside it, where the first element is the key and the next one is a value. But that's pretty much useless unless you understand why you need this. So these functions, you'll use them a lot, and the main reason to use them is like it's iteration. Okay, so in arrays, it's very easy to iterate. You pretty much say, okay, I want to go to element 0, and then for each of them, just go to element 1, 2, 3, do something with each element, and it's pretty straightforward. But if we speak about an object, right, we need a way to say that I want to see the age of the dog, and then I want to see the size of the dog, and then the race and the big and so on. Okay, I need to know each of these indexes. And the way I would find, and then like how I would do that, I use the output of, let's say, dot values. Let's try this here. I think it'll be easier than in the slide. So if I want to go through each of the values and, let's say, do something with it, I'm going to simplify this by just doing this. Okay, age model this, and I'm going to make this as a string. So kind of a typical use case, let's say. So going back to object dot values, okay, of the object car. Again, you already know how this looks like. This will pretty much be an array with each of these elements. And then you already know this from the array lesson. You can do for each, the big E. Okay, and we're going to put here just a variable name that we come up with. This is also possible, but just for yeah, you can skip sometimes the round brackets, but it's always better that you use them. We want to print B. Okay, so remove this. Let's try run this in the browser. And now for each of the parameters, we see them printed, right? A very simple thing, but maybe we want to do something with them, right? Also, if I put object.keys, enter, now in an array, I can do something with each of these keys, right? And then if I use a word entries, then I'll have both the keys and the values. And this construction, you'll have to kind of, get back to it, learn it. That's kind of what it is. We want to first do the following. So console log. We want to, for example, print the key first and then the value. Yeah, and then to make it a bit nicer, so it's clear what's happening, the value of key is this. Okay, save, enter. So the value of age is 15, the value of this is that, and so on, right? Yeah, we can also do something, let's say, something stupid, like, for example, let's say adding some letters to each of the things, right? So let's say we do car, and now this is where that square bracket construction comes in. So K, so this key. So what we're doing here, we're taking each pair of these things, each pair of key values, okay, and we're iterating through each of them. And here, also I can use here any kind of name that I want, values, or like parameters, like really like call it whatever you want. Sometimes I prefer just to use one letter. So every time I go through each of the elements, so car in the square brackets with K, it means that this for loop will go to the first parameter first. So K will be age, so age of the car. The next iteration is going to be model of the car, and so on. And let's say I want to, so if I use this construction, this would refer to this text, to this one, and then to this one. So let's say I want to just add like a letter to it. Okay, right? And then I want to see what happens with my object. So the object before this operation is the way you see it here. And now we're going to see the result of this, okay? Okay, yeah, so we see this word now added to each of the values, right? So this is the way you would iterate through objects. It's not something you always need to do or so on. It's something you would usually do is that you have multiple objects in an array. That's also possible. But yeah, you'll have to get back to this, try it yourself. If you don't try this yourself, it's really hard probably to understand what's happening here. Yeah, it's probably easy if you have some JavaScript. This is like a map. Yes, correctly. Hash maps, or how do you call those in Java? Yes, this is pretty much a map. Yeah. keys and values. And also computationally wise, again, without going much into computing, when you do array operations, there's much more, let's say, processing power being used the bigger your array becomes. Okay, but in the terms of objects, no matter how many of these keys and values you have, you can access any of the elements just by simply knowing the name of the key. Okay. Okay, so this is pretty much about iterating objects. I believe you have questions, so please throw them now. Say it. I doubt this is completely clear for everyone, especially if you haven't done JavaScript before. So,
Hello, can you hear
yes?
me?
Yes.
Can you use dot map instead of for each?
Again, instead of for each what?
Dot map, like I want to see the difference between for each and dot map.
Okay. So a dot map is something we're also going to learn later in the course. Another array functionality, it's called dot map. It's like a faster way in which developers dot map. Yes. I personally use it a lot, and later when we learn React, you'll understand why this is a very nice function. With dot map, first of all, a lot of the things, zoom please, yes, sorry. So the same way you did with arrays before, like, the name of it, dot something, you can also do dot map. And this is like, for example, what you see here, this is a very, very shortened way of declaring a function that you want that each of the element is multiplied by 2. So the fact that there's no squiggly brackets, or how do you call those? The fact that they're not there, it means that this is automatically what has to be returned. So the reason why I didn't start with dot map is because this is so simplified that it might not really be clear for someone just starting with JavaScript. Later, when you become, like a pro, you'll only use this kind of fancy things. Also, you can use dot map to kind of use a bit of like parallel processing at the processor level, but that's really not relevant here. Anyways, this is another way of doing for each, and also when you want to modify your elements. So just remember that, I guess. So I hope I answered the question. So something similar with Lambda. If you speak about Lambdas from Python, perhaps yes, those anonymous functions, one-liners. But if we speak about Amazon Web Services Lambdas, then that's a different story, I guess. But yeah, it's pretty much like Lambdas. Yeah. Okay. Any question about here? No. So does map and for each are slightly different things. So for each, you can decide what you do inside the function here. With dot map, you're supposed to return something. And what you're returning the new value of what you want to put instead there. But back to this. Questions? Well, cool. Nothing, I guess. All right. Going back to the slides. Did I miss them again? Oh, no. There you go. Okay, so this is how you'd go through each of the parameters. You'll have to try things yourself, try to experiment, create a new object, try to add a new parameter to it, try to read whatever. But the assignment will make sure that it challenges all of this knowledge. Full screen, yes. So back to this. Now, some of the confusions before you get to this surprised face here while you work on your code. Maybe some of you heard about copying by reference and copying by value. What's the difference between those two things? It's actually a very typical interview question at developer positions. So what does this really mean? I will explain it through this very simple examples. If we speak about simple variable types, numbers, strings, those like booleans, right? Let's say you declare one variable, you give it a value, you declare a second one, and you give it the name, this name of the first variable. And then we do some modifications on the first variable. Let's say we add 10 to it. Something, I guess, not surprising at this point for you is that they have two different values, because one remained, with the previous one, and here we did some changes to it. So each of them has their own position in the memory, their own place, their individual, variables, individual placeholders. I don't know how else to describe it. But I guess this is not surprising. You probably did this already in the assignment so far. But now, coming back to arrays, and this is also relevant to objects. Let's say you want to do the same with arrays. Let's say, again, we call it first array. We put all these elements inside it. We create a second array, and we give it the value of the first one. And at this moment, you're probably thinking, oh, I guess I have a separate array, a separate place in the memory. But yeah, things are about to be different. And now we do modifications on the first array. So what we do here, we change, the value of the second element. We change the value of the third element. You can do some for eaches. You do, whatever you want to do with that array. And then what we expect, like in the first case, is that second array keeps on having these values. So that's the normal expectation, I guess. But but then what happens once we print both their values, we've noticed that the second array inherited all those changes as well. Like, what the hell, like how, what do you do about it? So in JavaScript, and I think in general with like other scripting languages, and actually any language that has any kind of variables more advanced than strings and numbers, when you have a data structure, right, like a combination of variables together in the shape of an array, list, object, or so on, when you assign a variable to another one, which has this type of values, you're not copying everything. You're just copying a reference. Okay, you can try this in your code, but what happens is that you're only copying a pointer somewhere in the memory. You're saying that, I'm trying to use like simpler words. You're pretty much, how would I say it? It's pretty much an address of where this array is placed. Okay, so when you do this equal sign here, you're only giving it a reference. Okay, that's the name of copy by reference. So whatever modifications you do to the second one, or whatever modifications you do to the first one, they're in fact the same thing in your memory, nothing different. Okay. So obviously you're thinking, okay, is there a built-in function that copies the values? Yes, there is. Cool. So let's go to the first solution. So the most basic solution that you would use probably in a classical programming language, you make a for loop, and then for each of the elements, you say that I want to push this element to the second array. So I would create second array as an empty one, and then I would iterate through each of this and say that I want to push this here, push it, push it, push it, push it. And then you're actually creating a whole new array. You can do it one by one. So yeah, you're welcome to do that in your own time, but you can imagine this would be quite annoying to do this every time for every array, for every operation and so on. So obviously in JavaScript, they came up with something to make your life easier. So this is one of the modern ways to do it. You use 3 dots, okay? So that's the simple answer, just using 3 dots. But now to understand what these 3 dots are, it's called the spread operator. Of course, there are 3 dots in JS Lamau. Of course, yes. I think it's a common construction in a lot of other places. The spread operator, it's not necessarily only to do with arrays or objects. The spread operator takes an array, takes the array itself, and then each of the elements is placed with a comma, and then that's reused in your code. You can also use the spread operator if you want that each of these elements is passed as an argument to a function. Something not really common, to be honest. I don't really use that. Maybe there are some edge cases. But what this does is that it takes each element one by one and spreads them. And now, apart from just this, let's see another case where the spread operator would be useful. I'm going to make an array, numbers, and I'm going to make a very boring array. And then I'll do something like this. So now we're just going to spread this, and we're going to print this one, the last one. Save, and where's that one? Yeah, there you go. Refresh. So okay, all the ones. Okay, nothing. Yeah, pretty much we just copy pasted this this array from a place to another. I can then just put other elements. 5, 5, 5. I don't know. I can also put some things in before, like 4, 4, 4, whatever in this matter. And what's going to happen now? We see that we took this array, we spread it, and then we place it in the middle here, and then we put some more elements here, right? So this could have been solved maybe by doing pop, push, shift, and all this kind of stuff. But by using this, we actually also made the processor's life slightly easier, and also your life much easier, because you can really visually understand that what happens here, I take all of this, I spread it inside here, and then I put some elements on the sides. Yeah, I can also even put another one, right, like other numbers. Yeah, let's do this. Somewhere here, maybe I now want to put the other numbers, and we also want it spread. We save it, and I guess you already knew what's coming. We see those 3s right here. Okay, so back to this. Yeah, I don't know where exactly you'd use something like this. Usually you work with real life data, but this is just a nice use case to understand what the spread operator does. Okay, and if you don't put the spread operator, in case sometimes you get, it's a typical bug, that might happen. If you don't put the spread operator, what's going to happen? You see that this array contains an array at element 2, right? So sometimes don't be surprised if that happens if you forget about this operator. Yeah, so back to the slides. Yeah, so I guess it's pretty clear what it does for arrays. For objects, is the same situation. So I didn't write it down, but just like in the example here, if let's say this would be an object with a bunch of keys and values, dog with color and age and so on. If I want to copy paste its value, I would use the 3 dots. That's kind of it. But it only works on simple objects. And what I'm speaking about simple objects, it means objects that do not have sub-objects. Okay. If you have an object which has a lot of sub-objects, you need to do something called deep copy. And deep copy, it's like, you won't need it for the next assignments, at least, but there is a way with multiple for loops or some other, you can also use some more modern ways, where basically you say if an object has a sub-object, also copy each of the elements from there, and then go on and do that until you get as deep as possible, so to say. No need to go into that now. You'll be working with very clear, straightforward objects for now, and this would be a way to copy paste from one place to another. Yeah, so you have this code in GitHub now. You can also try it. You'll see that object 1 has remained what it has to remain, and the second one has a changed property, and nothing was confused. But what do you do with 2 dots? Yeah, good question. I don't think there's something you do with 2 dots. I know in Lua you use 2 dots to concatenate strings, but I honestly don't know if they use that in JavaScript. Next. Functions within objects. So that's also something interesting. You can optionally use this in the assignment that you're going to get. Just like any kind of variable can be added to a key in an object, a function is also a variable, right? So what do we see here? We created an object called badass. We gave it two keys, name and family name. We gave it some values. By the way, just to make sure, internet is fine up till now, right? No strange stuff. Cool. All right, nice. Okay. So this is something you've seen already, but in the same manner, you can create like another key. Let's say you could say my name, right? And the value of it is a function. This is an anonymous function. Okay, and why it's anonymous? Because it has, okay, so far you put some names to those functions, right? But you see this one does not have anything. And then now we're going to learn about this parameter. This means a lot of things in JavaScript. It's really confusing when you get started with it. Usually this refers to this or to the parent object, okay? So we're going to look at what this means in this specific. So this refers to the object, to the parent of this key. So the parent of this key is the object itself, okay? So actually, I think would be can you do the magic with connection again, please? Oh, is it really bad again? Too bad. On and off. Yeah, I guess let's risk it. Still here? Anything changed? Think turning. Okay, you don't want to see me. Okay, I'm going to stop my camera. That's fine. All right. Maybe it's better now, I hope. Okay, I'm now going to move to this IDE. Not bad. Okay, so I'm going to create a variable, call it fluffy. Yeah, again, give it some parameters. And so we're going to log this now. Again, nothing special here so far. Refresh. Yeah, we have an object with two keys, age and size. And now let's get to the part where we make, where we add a function to it. So for the beginning, yeah, we can say, let's make a stupid one. I have a good one. Let's say we have another key. Height, okay? And now we're going to make a function called jump. So like you've seen in the slide, we're declaring a function with no name again. And yeah, using the word this, never mind. Sorry, my bad. So this function can pretty much do nothing or just print something. And now to run this function, right, how do I refer to it? Because it has no name, so where the hell do I find it? You don't need a name for it because this is the name of it. And this is how you access it. So using the name of the parent object, fluffy.jump. And now, because it's a function, we need to run it in a specific way. It can also have arguments. We're going to call it how high, I guess, right? And then I am jumping, and let's say I need to use this ones. I'm jumping meters. And now we're going to pretty much just copy paste this here. And we're going to run this function. And to prove you that it works, I'm going to open this, refresh. Oh, no. Yes, of course it's undefined, right? Because I haven't given any value to it. So I'm going to put a number, 10. Okay, refresh, so I'm jumping 10 meters. Okay. So I guess that's pretty clear at this point, how to run a function from within an object. But now the real reason why you'd want these functions as part of your objects a lot of times is because you sometimes want to, let's say, ship out an object together with its functionalities. So let's say every time I run this function, the height of the, can you have multiple jumps? Yeah. No, okay, something maybe I did not say. You cannot have two keys with the same name within an object. So it's not necessarily that JavaScript is going to crash, but usually like currently in the modern JavaScript, they're trying to get rid of this possibility. Never use keys with the same name, okay? Because they're not, like, one of them is not stored in memory eventually. Okay, but you can have multiple other functions. You can jump or move left. Let's say if you're making a game or something, and this can be a different function. For now, we're just using one for the example. And let's say we want that every time this object does a jump, we say that this dot height equals this dot height plus 10. And after that, to understand at which height this object is, we're going to say, I am now at height. And which height is this? Is going to be, this dot height. Okay. And that's pretty much what the function does. And we're going to, do this 5 or several times, save it, refresh. And what we see now, first time, he says, I'm jumping 10 meters. I'm now at this height. I'm jumping this many meters, and so on. Okay, no need to repeat myself. And this is, a bit of object-oriented programming, a very simplified one. People who did some programming before, you probably learned about classes and so on. Don't worry, they have those in JavaScript. But for very simple purposes, this, like, you can declare objects just like that, no need of classes and so on. So what happens if you just type this height equals height plus 10? Height will not be, if I just simply write even just this, like, my guess is he's going to tell you that he has never heard about this, because this variable does not exist within the global scope or anywhere. Classes with public and private, as in C++, yes, there is public and private classes in JavaScript. We'll get a bit into that throughout the course. The thing is that public and private classes in JavaScript is kind of like, they call it syntactic sugar, just to make developers' life look beautiful. In fact, everything is eventually transformed to something like this. It's simplified. And also in a scripting language, you never have truly private functions and private variables and anything like that. Anything can be accessed at any point if you really want to. So you can break them. Yes, you can break them. That is quite true. That's the whole beauty of scripting languages. So the thing with when you use JavaScript, when you work on more advanced software, you have all the freedom of typing things dynamically the way you want, but then you, as a developer, you're responsible to make them, let's say, to take care about the security issues, right? So, so if a specific function expects specific parameters, then you have to be, you as a developer, you have to make sure that you make use of that parameter, right? Or if you don't use it, then there should be a logical reason why you don't use it. I guess I explained it well. About objects, in fact, this is kind of it. Now we're going to go really fast through setting up your GitHub page. I've seen a lot of you already have their GitHub page. Really nice. Maybe half of you don't have it or didn't start using it yet. we're not going to go into the whole details of what GitHub is and what not. But yeah, if you ask what is GitHub, it's like any of the answers right here is a valid answer. Okay. Yeah, a cloud where developers store their code. Starting from that, you never want to keep your code only on your computer. That can break. And then, yeah, an online software version control system. That's a lot of fancy wording, but it's something that allows you to keep multiple versions of your code. And this is important that when you actually make code for clients, sometimes you have a version which you're currently developing, and then there's a stable version that you actually give it to people to use. That's the most simple way of explaining this, I guess. Yeah, a portal where developers cooperate on software projects. So GitHub, also the main thing of it is that, yeah, it's a bit difficult, but in a very smart way, it allows developers to cooperate on writing code. It looks at your code files in such a way that it understands where you made changes, how you made them, it tracks them. And then, yeah, we're going to learn some basics from it to understand how does this versioning happen and how do developers actually cooperate. And in fact, when you're going to work on a group project, you are going to use GitHub to cooperate on it. So yeah, so far I guess you understand. Yeah, GitHub it's an alternative to you zipping and sending code files one to another and then saying where you did the changes and so on. Yeah, not the best way, I guess, to cooperate on code. And now the other things why maybe this is relevant for you. GitHub is also a place where you can show off your software portfolio. It's not necessarily a mandatory thing, like you can get jobs in development without the necessity of showing off that, oh, look, I've built this and that. There's a lot of people that can make their GitHub page look nice, but you know, like, let's say it's a social media for developers, and like in any kind of social media, there's people who are good at showing stuff, and then there's people who are good at doing stuff. But it's important to tell people to show what you know, right? And also, if you don't have a degree in programming or technology or anything like that, and you want to jump into this industry, yeah, if you don't have a diploma to show, an easy way to show your portfolio is just show your GitHub with nice explanation of like, this is where I built this. This is like a to-do list, for example, right? So that's something that can go in your GitHub. For some of you, or it already did, I guess. So this is why it's important for you. And also, one of the nice things about GitHub is, if you think about it, like it's a place where developers, they give open source code, meaning, in simple words, developers, for the good of the world, they make code that other people reuse for free. And we should be very happy that this is the case, because if that wasn't the case, any kind of phone, device, computer, any of that would cost, double or triple, because corporations would own the code and so on, right? And then they would want you to pay licenses for every piece of crap that they build. But because of the open source community, most of you develop for clients will be confidential, I imagine. Is that a problem for getting a job ask if you? Yeah, so a good question, Luke. So when you work on your own projects, you put them on GitHub and you show them off. But exactly, that's the problem that I've had also in the last years. Like, I'm working on a lot of projects which are, okay, not crazily top secret, but I definitely, I'm not going to show, give up a lot of the code which brings me or my company money, right? So that makes sense. But even companies, they decide, a large company, Microsoft, for example, I think really any tech company nowadays does participate in open source. React is made by Facebook, for example. Material design is made by Google. Angular is done by Google. And all of these words that I'm saying, these are, let's say, like software frameworks, open source frameworks, code, which was given to the world for free. And companies do have interest in participating in open source. So I'm not going to go into details why companies want to do open source. There's a lot of reasons for it. But what's important that we as people, as developers, we have access to, the intelligence of millions of developers out there in the world, and we can reuse that in solving any issues that we want. Okay, so I think that was pretty much it about conceptually what GitHub is. Now, what we're going to do, I think I've already showed you some stuff into a document that I sent recently. I'll resend it if that's necessary. We're going to learn just the simple stuff. I hope you have a GitHub account by now. If not, make it. It's quite easy. We're going to learn to simply create a new project, a new repository on GitHub. And just you as a single developer, you'll learn how to push code there and update it when you do changes. Yes? Someone wants to give a question? Okay, never mind. So you'll look in the slides later. You'll go to this links. I'll also send you the document. But two things you have to install if you have a Windows PC. Desktop.github.com. This is for you to get the client. But first, you need to go on this website. You also get the link for it. And you first have to download something like a driver, pretty much, which allows Windows to interact with GitHub. And then you'll need this to have a fancy user interface to be able to work with it. Next, you'll also follow some of the instructions here. Once you get to your GitHub account, you'll create a new repository. So in this account, for example, I have some closed repositories. So you click right here, a new. You give it a name, like my to-do list or whatever. Give it a description. You make it public if you want to show this to people. And then, and then you create a repository. I'm not going to create now, just not to pollute my thing. But after that, you open this GitHub client. Okay, I'm going to show how it looks like. And this client initially, it will look something like, let me just discard this. Yeah, it will look something like this. Somewhere here, you'll have to log in. So first time you open this program, it asks you to, larger. Unfortunately, I can't zoom in on this. You will get the screenshots and all the relevant stuff. Actually, I'm thinking instead of just making this in the video now, I will pretty much just add all of this in a Word document and send it to you all around. But the steps that you'll have to follow is that after you created that repository, what you do, so let's say this is a repository where we... Let's do that. Sorry, I'm not going to do that now because I'll put all the steps in the in a document if it's not visible. For now, let's just try to do it this way. So let's say there's this repository that I've sent around already. You already have the link of it. And what you probably tried to do so far is maybe that you downloaded the code by clicking this button, right? And this will just download a zip of this version at this very moment. But what you can also do, you can go here and you can do open with GitHub desktop, or what's also called in programming, it's called cloning a repository. So when you click on this, we're going to allow it to open, and it doesn't tell me anything because this is already open. And then once you open it, you'll follow some instructions because, again, this is not visible for now. You'll learn how to create a new file, you type new code, and then you do a commit operation and a push. So this will be the two Git functions that you'll learn, commit and push. And pretty much what those things will do is that the code that you have in Visual Studio Code inside your computer is going to appear here inside folders, subfolders, and whatever you want to do with it. So that will be the only things that you'll have to do for next time, and this is how you'll at least try, well, hopefully be able to submit your assignments. So you'll only send me a link, and I'll be able to just try things from here, just download it, and And the other thing, what's important is that you'll be able to also show off this to other people, use it as a portfolio in your CV or so on. Also, something which I encourage you to Google on your own. Every repository can have like a README file, which is written like this, a readme.md. .md, it's like it's a format, it's a markdown language. Yeah, I guess you already know that already. It's a markdown language in which you can write like fancy documents. It's kind of like, yeah, you can define things like titles, names. It's pretty much like some sort of simplified HTML, but it's really done specifically for writing documents. So if we look at what actually is in this document, this is the text that is in there. So using stuff like this hashtags, for example, would make the text bigger. Sorry. Yes, so for example, using this hashtag means that we're now defining a title, but just Google markdown files and you'll learn how to make tables, how to put images and so on. And why it's important for you to learn this kind of stuff, it's because when someone goes on your profile, goes on a repository, what's inside that README file appears here nicely written, right? So other repositories obviously look much nicer. There's sometimes like much better documentation and so on. Here I just wrote a description because this is just a repository that I created for you guys. Yeah, so this is about GitHub. You'll get information about how to install it and so on. On Mac, I'm not going to be able to help you much, but I think it's quite straightforward. It's also kind of the same way. I think you can also install it with a terminal command. But maybe, the colleagues will be able to help. I'll take a look as much as I can. So that's about GitHub. And later, as time goes, we're going to start learning more and more about how do you actually create multiple versions. We learn things like branches and so on. Okay, so that's about GitHub. And now, actually, any question about GitHub so far, or anyone? No? Okay. All right. So now the last part of today, as usual, the third programming challenge. So you'll be able to reuse a bit the stuff that you've built for the last time. Now we're going to make a web shop. Well, a simplified web shop or something that looks like a web shop. But you'll definitely get very useful learnings into how to build one, I guess. So this would be the requirements. So you'll create a list of products as an array of objects in JavaScript. So something I haven't shown in the slides, but you should understand these things by now, like what's an array. And after you look through the slides, you'll understand what the object is, I guess, or you probably got it by now. Yeah, you'll make an array where each element is an object, okay? In JavaScript, each product will have the following keys, the following properties, at least. You can add the others. I've seen you're very creative, but limit yourself for now with this. A name, a description, both of type string, a price, and a Boolean, which says if it's in stock or not, okay? Each product will be displayed in a separate div. So far you just use the UL and the list, right? And you've seen that, okay, there's some nice stuff that you can do with just lists and text. But for now, you're going to try to make like actual cards. I'm going to show you a bit of an example in the next slide. But the thing is like, the requirement is that you try to make more than just a text inside a square, okay? A new product is added by filling a simple form at the end of the displayed list. So just like you had one text input to type your new task, now you have multiple text inputs to say, the title, the description, and the price, and whether it's in stock or not. Just like simple form, okay? Just like in the last assignment, an X button for deletion next to every product. I guess, yeah, if you can already reuse stuff from last time. And now the fancy extras. So first one, next to each product, there's a buy button where if you click that button, you will increase a specific variable called total price. And that variable is shown somewhere on the right in something that you can call shopping cart, right? it's just for the sake of showing how you'd solve, let's say, a real life problem. So that would be the first one. On a separate side of the page, there's a simple shopping cart display, which shows a list of the products that have been bought together with a total sum, right? If you have enough time and motivation, this is a really good exercise. The next one, products which are marked as out of stock, they should have that button disabled, so you're not able to buy it. I want to get a bit of feedback because I don't see any of your cameras. How do you feel about it? Do you see this as difficult, interesting? Just type one word so I kind of get a feeling of what I'm talking about here. No? Difficult and interesting. Yeah, that's where we want it to be, I guess. Interesting. Only time will tell. Just, oh my God. What do you mean by challenging? Challenging means slightly difficult, that it's interesting. That's what I call it, challenging. I'm going to say, Nikolai, no, please don't do that. There's a lot of friends here. We can help you. You can talk with us. Very challenging, okay? Seems like a good continuation. Yeah, I guess that's what I had in my mind, like a good continuation of the previous assignment. If you're proud of the code that we wrote last time and it's like very clear and you like it, really just try to continue by enriching it and getting to this. Okay, and the last part, which is, I would say, not an extra, you will push this on your GitHub. So I'll send you as soon as possible. We'll use this project to add a database. We will learn about database next month. Yeah, we'll learn first about server, Node, JavaScript, and so on. DB, nice. Yes, exactly. For now, I'll show you a trick. If you want that, if you want that when you refresh the page, that all the objects don't disappear, I'll show you a trick. I think Niku Savin already learned that trick as well. He messaged me throughout the week. There's a way to use the Google Chrome's local storage to save those things kind of in the memory of your browser, if you want, but that's just something. If you want, you can ask me, and then I'll show you the example. Now, local storage, exactly. Now, just a more visual, let's say, of course, here's what objects are and how to console log them or something. Assignment, basically, make Amazon. Yeah. I mean, if you all have time, I'll try to show you some stuff. But the idea is that the assignment should be, it's pretty much like you using the knowledge that you get here to actually build something. So I'm not going to show how you make a list out of an object and how do you display stuff. The idea is that you start discovering those things yourself and you put the right questions in the chat, right? No one is going to make the questions for you. Anyways, so this is something, some developers, they call it the wireframe. A wireframe means like an estimation of how you want to draw your design, I guess. And I don't know, what else is that? So this is how, just something that I imagined how this assignment could look like. This, just the minimum stuff that you would do for this assignment would be just the stuff you see here on the left. So each element would appear in a square. Again, no need of fancy design or colors. Just a square. It's delimited and maybe it has a color, so it's clear that it's a square. You would put the title, kind of make it maybe in a bigger word and a bigger font, or with H1 or whatever. And then you would have the description, the price, write it any way you want, even if it doesn't have the dollar sign or doesn't matter. And then if you remember the Boolean in stock, you shouldn't type true, false, because users don't want to see true, false. Users want to see an indication. So what I want to challenge you here is that you use the programmatic way of changing the style of an object. So you've seen that already in the last lecture. In such a way that this square would, let's say, be of color green or something, or maybe nothing appears if it's in stock, but in such a way that based on a Boolean value, you'd either display an object or not, or you display it in a color or display it in a different color, whatever comes to your mind. And then at the bottom of all this, you'd have the form that we're talking about. Again, even if the arrangement is just one on top of each other, does not matter. It's important that you learn the part with JavaScript, okay? Fancy HTML elements, we're going to learn those later. You'll see that you don't have to go that much to details. And then, so the 3 inputs, you've already seen how that works. You've seen a number input in the first assignment. You've seen a text input in the second one. A button, I guess that's been there already a lot of time. And now this is where this is a slider or a checkbox. I'm about to show you like the alternatives. Well, something that allows the user to put true or false somehow, right? So that's either a checkbox or you own potato, great quality green fruit. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I copy pasted that, right? And now for those who, like challenges in life, or you have a lot of free time on your hand. Okay, now everyone noticed that. On the right side, or even on the bottom side of your screen of the page, you can put like this in the cart part, where you would type, first of all, so the first extra, just like a total price. So next to each of these, you would click, like you make a button, and when you click buy, the total price increases by this much or by that much, okay? And yeah, if you want, after that, what you also do is that you have a list which dynamically shows you what objects you have in the shopping cart. So doing this, it's kind of like, I'm pretty sure you can already use all the stuff you learned in arrays and objects so far. It will be a bit of an extra challenge, but it's not crucial. But really, I think if this becomes interesting for you in the beginning, I think it'll be hard for you not to want to start doing, adding the extra stuff. And now, about the slider thing, in case, I think you might be confused once you're looking for a slider. The thing is, by default, there's no toggle switch or slider. Slider, I'm sorry. I've used the wrong word. So it's not slider, it's a switch. Slider, it's a completely different input. It's the one which allows you to pick a number between 0 and something, and you move it from left to right. So that's something different. A toggle switch, right? So these 2 links, I'll also post them in our chat. These 2 links show you how to either make a toggle switch with CSS. Not necessary. This is just if you want it to look nice, or if you have a bit of OCD and you always want things to look in the right shape. But it's fine if you just use a checkbox. And a checkbox is just a square that you can tick or untick. So that's good enough. So you find those on W3 Schools, and I'll send you the links. And that's pretty much it for today. Let's go to questions. Anyone?
Can we maybe make a walkthrough, like, I don't know, steps? So I have no idea how to start this assignment so far. So maybe some steps would be useful.
Yeah. Very first thing you would start, you would define, an array perhaps, where you want to put each of our products, right? So based on the knowledge you got before, you would only put, name like potato, cucumber, and so on. But in this case, we have more parameters, and that's why I've learned objects today, right? So your array can be an array of objects, exactly. So that's the point. It has to be an array of objects. So first element is going to have a name, potato, and I'm not going to put all the stuff. You're going to do that yourself. Price 5. Yeah. By the way, in case you don't know or you forgot, Alt-Shift-F will always arrange your objects really nicely. And then, the second object. And now we have an array of products. Initially, your array will be empty because you'll programmatically add each of them. But when you add them, it will look something like this, right? So if we print this, look here. Yeah, we see the whole array and each of the objects. And if you want to print object 0, okay, fresh, we just see everything about object 0. And if we do products.forEach, yeah, then you can again, and then this is your product, and you can do whatever you want with the price or the name, right? So you need to use at least something like that. So except for the object part, defining the list will be pretty much done in the same manner like you did in the previous assignment, right? So the deletion part, the reference part, nothing really different there, apart from the fact that instead of having a simple string here, you have an object. So you'll have to probably say that p.price probably has to go in a, like a document get element, blah, 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 all of that stuff, get element. Okay, let's do it proper. Element by ID, and then, like this will be your UL, or let's say this will be a div or something, and then you want like dot inner HTML to be equal with the price. And then maybe somewhere else, like another object, you want that to get its name, right? So that's how you'd refer to each of the parameters. But in general, nothing different from what it was last time. So this is what we speak about the listing. Now, if we get to the part of adding a new product, right? So far, you just had a text input, right? What was it? Input. So what you'll do now, you'll just have multiple inputs. That's kind of it. But this one will be the ID name, yeah? Then you have to indicate to the user, maybe like you put it with a placeholder, or maybe you just actually write the word name on top so the user sees that. And then each of them will have a separate ID. I'm not going to type that. That's for you to get an ID. Yeah, label also. Yeah, there's also input labels. That's also possible if you want to do it fancy. This part, again, a bunch of text inputs, a button, and then the checkbox. You'll learn how to make a checkbox. If you know how to make a button, a checkbox will be very straightforward. It's the same as a text input. Let's say you'd read the value of it, but instead of getting a string, you get a true or a false. So that would be this. And then when you click the when you click the button add product, just like in the previous assignment, you maybe clear out all of this, and then you programmatically go products for each, and then get element by ID, and then add child. The only difference is that instead of using this word, you will actually instead of using this variable, you'll use the children of that variable. Yeah, the name, the price, and so on. Okay, and then you can also, if you remember, I showed how I used one of the parameters as an ID of the product, as an ID of the element. You can use, for example, its name as a unique identifier, let's say. So this is the list. So if you get to this part, I think you'll be quite proud of yourself. You'll see that you indeed learned something new, and it's really good enough for this assignment. And yeah, if you want to go into the extras, in the front of each of these, you're going to put a button. So you already know how to put a button. Actually, you already put a button for the X, so you already know how to do that. I've showed that in the beginning of the lesson. And then you add another button called buy, let's say, okay? And when you click that button, there's maybe a global variable called, total sum. And then one of the functions, the function that has to run when that button is clicked, it'll be something like, read the value of the ID. Actually, yeah, let's go through it. So when I click on that buy button, I should get the ID of this instance, which then should send me back to this object, to this reference, because I know it's placed in the list. And then I find that price, and then that price has to be added to the total sum. So this is an extra because you have to figure out how you do it yourself. It's not mandatory, but it's an interesting challenge. Yeah, and then in the same manner, if you want to add your the products that you, let's say, bought, then when you click that button, the moment that you identify which product, the button of which product has been clicked, you take its price, you add it to the total, you take its name, and you add it maybe to another array, like let cart equal this. And then it'll do something like, cart.push, and then that name, like product.name. And then if you want to make it fancy, you can do it in such a way that before displaying this, you kind of look if there's any objects that have the same name, and if they have the same name, you kind of increase a counter. Again,